Chair. This year the Met Police will cut more than 1,700 officers, PCSOs and staff. I invite the Minister to intervene and correct me on that if necessary. It seems to suggest that there was an error in that figure earlier on. However, a correction there cometh not. This will include the cuts of, or the loss of, the Parks Police team and also officers placed in schools who've been so critical to maintaining early intervention in these settings and diverting young people away from a life of crime, but also improving relationships with young people and the police, ensuring that they're able to trust police when they have information that may well lead to the prevention or solving of crimes, officers who are so dearly needed today. The £260 million below the required budget in London will also create a 10% cut to the forensics teams. That includes the investigation of aforementioned offences such as tool theft and also sexual offences and many other crimes. There will be an 11% cut to historic crime teams and a 25% cut to mounted police who police festivals and sporting events and protests that we see happening so more regularly in central London. There will also be a 7% cut to the dog teams who provide support to officers going into dangerous and challenging situations, leaving them unsupported and potentially at risk. Now, there's also reduced front counter operating hours and even the hint to take firearms off the flying squad. Now, you might well ask why these cuts are relevant to this amendment. Well, the cuts throughout the Met Police will inevitably lead to more abstractions from outer London police forces, particularly the cuts to mounted police and the dog teams, leading to officers being pulled out of outer London, including my own in Sutton and Cheam. That will leave our high streets less safe, our residents more fearful of being victims of crime, and more crimes going unsolved. This demonstrates the absolute need and necessity for that community policing to be delivered and the guarantees to be put in place so that this doesn't happen, which affects my residents and residents across London. The annual report that this amendment also requires, or this new clause also requires, gives clear, transparent information on officer numbers, PCSO numbers and costs and the real-world impact on crime and public confidence. So I do urge the honourable members to support this clause.
Thank you, Mr Pritchard. If I just respond directly to the points that have just been put about the Metropolitan Police, and I think it is worth us just reminding ourselves the Metropolitan Police are the best funded part of policing in England and Wales. Now, they do constitute around 25% of policing, but they are this year receiving up to £3.8 billion to provide policing in London. So I think that's just worth reflecting on. They have also received, as has every other police force, additional money to fund neighbourhood policing. So, and that money for neighbourhood policing is going into neighbourhood policing. I know that, I've had that reassurance from the Met. So I think it's worth saying that. And I think, whilst I fully appreciate what the Honourable Gentleman for his constituents is concerned about, it has to be clear that we have just come out of 14 years, many of which of those years were the years of austerity. And I don't wish to labour the point, but the Honourable Gentleman's party was part of that first 5 years of the austerity that we saw where cuts to the public services were most acute and severe. So I think we're now at the end of that period, and this Labour government is trying to put money back into policing. And I've been very clear that there is more money going into the Metropolitan Police, as in every other police force, to build up the neighbourhood policing in particular. But I do think a little bit of humility on the part of the Liberal Democrats might be helpful.
Again, I do invite the Minister. The specific point was made about 1,700 fewer officers in London, and whatever the circumstances are, I think people today are concerned about crime. People here today are concerned about tool theft. They're concerned about sexual offences. we can argue and trade back and forth on, Liam Byrne's note about there being no money left, about austerity, about how long memories go back. But to be clear, if there are cuts to officers next year, in my constituency of Sutton-on-Cheam and across London, let's address the issues that are at hand and about how we mitigate the impact on our residents tomorrow.
I'm hearing very loud and clear, and I think all members actually in this committee are concerned about crime and wanting to make sure crime goes down and that victims are supported, and we want to see the police properly funded. So I think we can probably all agree on that around the committee room. On the particular point, though, about the Metropolitan Police, I do dispute the numbers that the Honourable Gentleman has raised in this chamber, because what my understanding is, in 24-25, he's right, there will be a loss of PCSOs and police officers, but it's around 1,000, not 1,700. That's my understanding. And subject to what happens in the spending review, we will then have to look at what happens in future years. But I think the Metropolitan Police have for years not had the funding that they've required, and that's why they're having to make some really difficult and tough decisions now. Nobody wants to see a reduction in police officer numbers. The Police Minister certainly doesn't. So, I am working, as is the Home Secretary, to do everything we can to support police forces and not to see reductions in PCSOs and police officers. If I